This happened many years ago, when I was 6 years old, mid-1990s, I think. Sorry if the story is a bit long. My family was living in a small town where pretty much everyone knew everyone, and in the apartment complex where we lived, it felt like we were all a huge family. My mom was hanging up laundry on clotheslines, and I was playing outside near where she was. I asked her if I could ride my bike by the sidewalk since no one was really there. Pretty much everyone had gone to work. She said okay, but only in front of the apartment. I get on my bike and start heading to the front of the apartment to get my helmet. As I get to the front door, I notice a car I don't recognize parked a little further down from my front door to the right, but it's not parked correctly. It's parked in backwards vertically, taking up 2 spaces, whereas it should have been parked diagonally. I'm just standing there for a few seconds, with my thoughts on this weird car, when I hear someone to my left whimpering, and another voice saying, "Shut up, or I'm taking you to jail." I turn, and it's a girl that I have played with before, and a man I've never seen before pulling her by the arm. Her and I make eye contact, and I can see she's scared, and then she mouths, "Help." I look up, and the man is staring at me, and they briefly stop. He then asks me, "What are you looking at? Do you also want to go to jail, you little freak?" When he said those words to me, I was really ticked off since I don't like being called names, and also being a smart-alecky little kid, I said, "You're not a cop. You look too old to be one." He gets angry, grabs me by my wrist, and starts pulling me toward the car by my apartment. I yell at the other girl to start swinging and kicking, and she does just that. I end up biting his forearm so hard that I broke skin. He lets go of the other girl and takes a swing at me, as I'm still biting him and not letting go. Luckily, he missed my head/face and hit my shoulder instead. I hear the girl yell at me to let go and run. I let go of my bite and run behind him to get the girl to run with me, and I see that she's kicking him in the back of his knee. That might have caused him to let go of me now that I think of it. He starts falling forward, and when he tries to catch himself, I hear a loud crack. I don't stay around to see what it was. I grab my friend by the wrist and run to the back of the apartment. My mom had heard the commotion and was on her way to the front of the apartment with my helmet. She thought that was why I was yelling. When my mom sees me and the other girl running and took one look at our faces, she tells us to run inside and lock ourselves in. Once inside, we ran to the front window, and I see this petite woman, my mom, hitting the perv with my helmet. I hear her yelling something, but I can't understand what she's saying since my ears were ringing. But I see her turn to her left, and then I see a broomstick hit the guy. It was the girl's mom. My older siblings who were at home run to pull my mom and the lady off the guy, and he runs to his car and takes off. We called the cops, and when they got there, they asked me and my mom if I needed an ambulance for my injuries. I hadn't noticed, but I had bit the guy so hard I had a good amount of his blood on my clothes and part of my neck. I didn't ingest any, so I might have gotten it when I let go and he tried to get me again. I tell the cops that it isn't my blood, to which one of them had this what the heck expression on his face, and the other gave me a high five. They're asking all of us questions, and it turns out the guy was an ex-worker at the plant where the girl's dad worked. He was let go because he was always drunk or hungover, and he blamed the girl's dad. When the cops found him, he had 3 broken ribs, a broken wrist, a dislocated shoulder, a gash on his head where he needed a few stitches, a gash on his arm where he also needed stitches, a broken collarbone, a broken foot, etc. When my dad got home a couple hours later, we told him what happened. He apparently also knew the guy, and they had been in a fist fight because they worked together years ago, and the perv tried to grope one of the young women who worked there. He took a swing at my dad, and my dad knocked him out. When the perv made bail, unbelievable I know, he tried to go around causing sympathy, and it didn't work. He kept getting beat up. Soon after, he left town, and since he violated his agreement when he posted bail, he was sent back to jail.
I was catfished by a creepy, much older guy. I was 17 and in the 11th grade. I usually didn't accept random requests on my Instagram, especially if we had no mutuals. I took my page off private for a while, and so anyone could follow me. This is when I got a notification that this guy started following me. The page had a normal following, not small enough to question whether it was a fake account or not. He had multiple pictures of himself with friends and family, with captions and all. His comments were off for all of his posts, which wasn't a red flag since I had mine off too. Immediately after he began following me, he went through my profile and liked all of my pictures. He was a fit, good-looking guy, so I was flattered. Not long after, he DM'd me, replying to a story of mine, asking me if I was from this particular city, and that he was from there too. We immediately hit it off, and DM'd nonstop for a while. It didn't feel forced, and we never ran out of things to talk about. We eventually swapped phone numbers and started texting. He told me he was studying at a really good university which was in a city 2 hours away from where we both lived. Our talks escalated to day-to-day phone calls which lasted for hours. I sincerely started growing feelings for him, and he made it clear he felt the same for me. We would talk about our deepest insecurities, our past, what we wanted our futures to look like, etc. It had been about 2 months of talking, and I was undeniably eager to meet up in person. He would tell me he was coming to visit home on the weekend, but would always come up with an excuse as to why he couldn't make it. He gave very convincing and detailed excuses, never vague, so I didn't question it. I hadn't told any friends about him until my best friend and I had a sleepover. I ended up telling her about him, showed her his pictures, and didn't leave out that we hadn't met yet. Wanting to look out for me, she suggested I ask him to video chat to make sure he is who he says he is before meeting up. She told me she didn't want to freak me out, but that she was sure she had seen his pictures on Tumblr before. There's a tool on Google that can be used to locate social media accounts and articles where the pictures had been posted. While she was at that, I called him and asked him if he was at home and alone, before asking him to video chat so he couldn't make up an excuse on the spot. He said he was home and alone, but couldn't video chat because of his weak internet connection. My heart sank into my stomach. The possibility of being catfished was not far-fetched anymore. I quickly downloaded WhatsApp because I remembered him telling me he spoke to his parents on it. Before doing that, though, my friend showed me the results she found, which devastated me to my core. The man in the pictures was a French model and singer. We found the exact pictures that the POS used on his catfish profile on an actual verified Instagram account. My devastation turned into anger, then turned into absolute disgust and revulsion when I saw his profile picture on WhatsApp. He was evidently much older than he claimed he was, probably in his 30s, a completely different race than what he portrayed to be, lied about being a university student, etc. P.S. I have no preferences when it comes to race or nationality, but he literally lied to me in detail about being part Italian, part Colombian. Even made up an excuse as to why he didn't speak Italian or Spanish when he claimed he frequently visited back home. I wanted to crawl into a hole and die. I started to sob uncontrollably and confronted him on WhatsApp. He went on to explain how he came across my profile and wanted desperately to get to know me. He said he knew I wouldn't be interested in who he actually is and wouldn't be attracted to him, so instead he used his fake account, which he was already using and active on prior to coming across my profile. He said he came close to coming clean multiple times but was afraid of how I would react. He said even though his persona was fake, everything else was genuine. Turns out he was a 31-year-old mechanic and living with his parents. He even confessed to driving to my neighborhood, finding my high school, and following me around as I went about my day. I blocked him off WhatsApp. Then he quickly started texting my number, begging me not to block that too, and to give him a chance to explain things face to face. Heck no. I went on to block him off everything, feeling absolutely heartbroken and betrayed while doing so. I spent months of my life daydreaming and fantasizing about how it would be like when we finally met in person, and where it would go from there. Grew genuine feelings for him and even considered applying for the same university he was supposedly studying at. I got over it eventually, but I've definitely grown to be very paranoid and distrusting when it comes to meeting people online. I am happily married now, but I wonder what would have happened if he and I met in person, and the consequences I would have faced for being so naive and oblivious.
If you're into true crime shows or channels, you may have heard this story before, or at least the main details. I've seen it covered in several myself. Here's some context. This event happened 11 years ago. I had just turned 18 and moved to Orange County, California. I moved into an apartment complex near the community college I was attending, so a bunch of younger people around my age lived there. I didn't know a single person in California, so I would take any opportunity to socialize and meet new people. A big gathering place at the complex was at the main pool where people would drink and relax in the sun. Over the first few months, I would meet a bunch of people while hanging out at the pool. I never got super close to any of them, but I would see these same people several days a week. We would often go back to each other's apartments after the pool to drink or smoke some more. It was a really mellow and fun environment. 3 people I would see all the time were Sarah, Mike, and John. One day, after hanging out at the pool, Sarah, my girlfriend, and I went back to my apartment. The 3 of us smoked and Sarah went back home. Regular day. The next day, we were at the pool and there were a few of the usual people missing, but still a solid 10 people, so we didn't really notice. We go home later that night, and my GF gets a call from one of our friends. My GF playfully answers her phone, and the expression on her face starts to change. She's just listening and her eyes get super wide. She says, "What the hell? Are you freaking serious?" and hangs up the phone. I'm super confused, so I ask her, What happened?" She says, "Dude, the police just found Sarah dead in Mike's apartment, and Mike is nowhere to be found." What the hell? It was insane. I asked her if he said anything else, but she told me he was really hard to understand. We went to bed and met up with the usual crowd at the pool the next day, which included John and his fiancée. We were all talking about how unbelievable this was. Sarah was the epitome of sweet, and Mike was easily one of the kindest people I'd ever met. He was one of the first people I met when I moved, and he gave me some beer even though I was underage and told me stories. These were both good people. It didn't make any sense. We all kind of started speculating and just tried to make sense of it. Nobody could get a hold of Mike. We all started to worry if he was safe. Somebody suggested that Mike probably killed Sarah, panicked, and then ran. That was a hard pill to swallow for most of us, but it was the only thing that kind of made sense. John shook his head and said, "Man, just awful." We all dispersed and went home. It would be the last time I would see most of those people. Fast forward a month or two. I was hanging out in my apartment one evening when my GF calls me frantically. "Please come to my friend's apartment. You aren't going to believe this. This is the most messed up thing I've ever seen," she said. I rushed over to the apartment where my GF was. She was with 2 friends we knew from the pool. One of them was crying hysterically while the other sat with him. My GF motioned for me to go outside, and the other friend stayed back to keep consoling the other. Once we were out of earshot, she told me why her friend was crying so intensely. Her friend had just got back from being with the police. He was asked to identify pieces of a dismembered body that were found in the sewer. He was crying because he positively identified the body parts as Mike's. How did the police know they were there? They knew because John told them he did it. Turns out, John was, and still is, a broken piece of filth. This guy was engaged and didn't have enough money for his wedding. Being a smart person, Mike had a bunch of money saved up. John found out about it and decided to kill Mike and steal his money. John was an acting student and asked Mike to help him move some heavy things at the theater. When Mike's back was turned, John shot him. He then took Mike to another location where he dismembered his body and dumped his remains in the sewer. John took Mike's keys and phone and then went back to Mike's apartment. From there, he texted Sarah on Mike's phone, asking for her to come over because he wanted to talk. Being the sweet and caring person she was, Sarah went over to Mike's apartment to help him feel better. When she got there, John snuck up behind her and shot her. He left the apartment and framed Mike for Sarah's murder. John was caught because he's a stupid idiot. He paid some kid to withdraw money from Mike's ATM account. The cops found the kid and he told them about John. They quickly tracked John down at his bachelor party. He was taken in for questioning, where he would admit that he murdered Sarah and Mike. He would later be sentenced to death. After sentencing, Mike's dad spoke to John across the courtroom and said, "My only regret is that the state of California doesn't allow me to kill you myself." Turns out, his fiancée tried to help him hide the evidence, and she was sentenced to time as well. All in all, a pretty dark story. Aside from the violence, what messes me up the most is that this guy had literally just murdered two of our friends, and he was at the pool commiserating with us. Like, genuinely acting upset, sad, and confused. He's a horrible human, and I hope he suffers for the rest of his life. My deepest and continued condolences go out to the families of the two innocent people that were killed. What's up, everybody? This is the Lone Wolf here. Thank you so much for listening to the video. I hope you guys enjoyed these stories. So first things first, I'd like to apologize for my absence. A couple weeks ago, I did go on vacation, like I mentioned, but shortly after coming home from vacation, I got a bit sick. It wasn't COVID, thankfully, because I did get tested, but I figured I would take that week off as well, just so I could rest up and prepare for the next week. So now that I'm back, I will be making weekly videos again until school starts. So anyways, I would like to give a big thank you to the Redditors who allowed me to read their stories in this video. There will be links to each individual Reddit post in the description below for anyone who wants to read them. I also want to give a massive thank you to Creeparoni for working with me in this video. She mostly does creepypastas on her channel, along with other fictional stories, so if any of you are interested in that, feel free to check out her channel and show her some support. There will be a link to her channel in the description below, as well as an icon that will appear on screen at the end of the video. If you're new to my channel, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing if you enjoyed my narrations. Hit that bell for notifications and join the Lone Wolf Pack. If any of you guys want to send me a message or maybe a personal scary story that you would like me to read, there will be a link to my email account and my Twitter account in the description below. There will also be links in the description for the music artists that I used in this video, as well as each individual track that I used in case you're interested in the music. And last but certainly not least, if any of you guys have any ideas or tips for me to make my videos better, please leave me a comment or send me a personal message. Until next time, stay spooky. And remember, the hunt begins when the moon is full. See you soon.